Happy early Thanksgiving, or whatever the new less we're taking your land from you name might be. It, that's certainly evolving in a positive direction as we learn more of our history. So I'm wearing orange as best I can. It's a little bit Halloweeny, but it's the best Thanksgiving-ish colors I have. So heading into a long weekend for many, coming back out of that, it's the final crunch. I'm hopeful for you that you are not in this annual budget death spiral towards the end of the year where you don't even know what you're working on or what the priorities are or how many teams you're going to have. Unfortunately, that's one of those situations that happens way too often with way too many companies, and especially companies that proclaim to be agile. They really enjoy this waterfall method of planning for the entire company. And when you bring it up, and when you say, hey, why are we doing it this way? You're going to get some pushback. You're going to get some pushback. But that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't mean you give up. But I can guarantee you, the first time you start pushing that angle, folks are not going to be happy. They're going to tell you it's impossible. Just like the team you coach is going to tell you it's impossible to build, test, and deploy code all in the same sprint. I'm sure many places that you've been have said things like that. There is zero reason that you can't have a rolling, evolving budget as you learn and move into the future. Common hurdles, common excuses are going to be the board. The board needs this, the board wants that. That's another frustrating topic because, believe it or not, the board works for the company, not the other way around. Too often, the company is working for the board, and that tends to drive some behaviors that are less than optimal. If your company's doing that, you've got some big hurdles. I can help. This is not a advertisement for Josh's services, but that's something I've been able to tackle in the past. It's not easy. It takes time, and it requires complete buy-in from executive leadership team. So if you don't have that, then you're just going to have to accept the way things are. But if you do, have them give me a call or somebody else that works in my line of business can help you out, because that will change things drastically. But alas, that's so often not the issue. So while we wait for folks to filter in on this last day before Thanksgiving, talked a little bit about some of the board challenges that people might have. Let's talk about, I'm not going to do like, what are we thankful for? That's not who I am. But let's talk about closing out this last month. What are the things that are on your plate to drive change with? Don't just do that layup of, oh, hey, it's the end of the year. We're not gonna get done what we want to get done. What changes can you make? Just because it's Thanksgiving doesn't mean you can't make changes. There's so many places that hit this freeze button at the end of the year where that continuous improvement stops continuing. So don't fall into that trap of, well, we're here, it's the holidays, a lot of people are going to be out. Yes, that's all true, but what you just give up? You just say like, well, we can't get better. We're done. We're cooked. It's over. No. You get back in, you play the game. Don't just roll up the white flag, because there's a lot that can be done. And this end of the year lull, as it is in many places, creates the opportunity for you to potentially work on some of the things that you haven't had the opportunity to allocate your time to, or your brain. So don't pass up on the opportunity when it presents itself. That would be a shame. And it is a shame because it happens a lot. So please don't fall into that trap. Obviously not lastly, it's 12:06. Uh, if you are one of the folks that have been affected by some of the layoffs, there's a lot of layoffs happening right now, which timing is nasty. Like, why now? You couldn't, the end of the year, holidays, things like that. Reach out to your community. I've said over and over again that the agile community is made up of people that just want to help. So if you're in the agile space, even if you're not in the agile space, reach out. You can chat with us. We've helped people get hired on our Discord server. There's lots of things and lots of options. Again, people just want to help. So don't sit and wait. Get out there, get active, find some help. We got a no-show so far? What the hell? If I'm showing is live on LinkedIn, since this is my first time doing this. It does show me as live. Ooh. Yeah, okay, that's working. That's good. I just added LinkedIn to YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. So we should get pretty good coverage. But I know it's a big travel day, and I'm fighting against the World Cup. So, yeah. It's going to make things tough. But that's okay. I'm here. If no one shows up, wouldn't be the last time. Or maybe I should say it wouldn't be the first time. Definitely wouldn't be the first time. I think it might be the last. Well, depends on if I do silly stuff like Christmas streams and things like that, which I've done in the past. Although I usually get one or two people, kind of the regulars that pop in there. But that's neither here nor there. Well, so this is one of those interesting moments as a live streamer. How long do you stay on without a good flow of viewers? It's always interesting. So far, I've got 8 minutes of solid chatter to myself, which I've grown good at over the years. That's one thing that streaming will help you get good at, is getting comfortable talking to the webcam. Because if you can't do that, then you're in trouble. But so many of the first streams were just me and the webcam. But that's not us today. So questions that are out there, please let us know. Here to ask, just pop it in the chat and we will help you out. We have some new tools that can highlight your questions, which is exciting. Oh, getting pinged. Whoa, look at this guy. Disco Stew coming in on LinkedIn. Holy shit, that's exciting. Yeah, man, first time on LinkedIn. How's the business? Have you sold it yet? Have you retired? You have your feet up in the Bahamas or wherever you would hang out and play disc golf? Oh, by the way, my oldest son is disc golf crazy now. He was into it and then got out of it, and now he's really into it. So, yeah, that's fun. The legendary Disco Stew. If anybody ever asks me how to technically do something, the first person I call is Stu. Oh, which I have an interesting project or idea. Oh shoot, I don't know, man. That's a good question. He might not even know he needs to have that. Because the challenge is that now he's also dipped his toe back into the League of Legends world and is thinking about trying to shape a team for that. So, he's as bad as his father with work in progress limits all over the freaking place. So I have a technical challenge that might be interesting. I'm working on potential funding for it. If that comes through, I'll give you a call. I won't bother you with it until there's actual money backing it. Unlike the last time. Sad face. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I'm up against the World Cup travel day, Thanksgiving. And I know like Wake County schools are off today. So, yeah. Parents are probably occupied. It's all right. How old's baby Stu? I'm afraid to ask. I don't want to know. I do want to know, but I'm terrified because I'm so old. Oh dear Lord. Well, this is going to be a big season for him. I imagine that list of requests is solid. And that's like the time when nothing's small. There are no small gifts. They're all giant. The lag is real. That sucks. This is my first time streaming on LinkedIn with this tool. So I don't know what I'm up against there. One of my least favorite things of being a father is Christmas morning and all of those like metal twist ties that are in gifts for kids of that age. And there's a million of them and they're annoying. And your child just like wants the thing out of the box. So they're excited, they're fired up, trying to figure out why dad's so slow. And you're trying to unwind the stinking piece of metal. That's why I'm tightly like I can't imagine the machines that they have to do that. Or if there's a human that does that, I don't ever want to arm wrestle that person. Ever. Because that would be instant loss. Well, Disco Stew, it's just us, man. Just us. Well, that's all right. I'll have another one next week. It's like agile, right? You just do another one next week. Rinse and repeat. Learn and adjust. That's what we're going to do. So at least we got someone on LinkedIn that I will consider a success. Not minimizing who it is, but just the fact that we got a viewer from LinkedIn. Thumbs up. Who knows when you'll be responding to this, Stu? Maybe you are. Maybe you are. Can you hear a good team story? A story about a team? There once was a team that had a senior engineer. Stop me if you heard this one. They had a senior engineer. For the recording. Oh, yeah, okay, that's fair. Let's see. Good team story. One of the things that I went back to Ohio this weekend And boy, am I happy I left, because there are two people in my immediate-ish family, right? You think like first cousins, aunts, uncles, things like that. My aunts are relatively young. So for instance, my youngest aunt is only 8 years younger than me. No, sorry, 8 years older than me. So her daughter is like 3 years older than my oldest. So they kind of grew up together. So my cousins and I are pretty close because, age is pretty close. And the one of the frustrations I've had really in Northeast Ohio, but also here in the Raleigh area, is this parental drive slash expectation that you can't succeed if you don't go to college. And Stu's a perfect example of folks that chose not to go that route and are absolute rock stars. One of my favorite teams that I've ever worked with, 75% of the people that are on that team either didn't go to college, or if they did go to college, it was for something other than computer science or engineering or something like that. It was just a bunch of smart, fast learners that worked well together. Yes, there was the one guy that was the comp sci person that helped bring in that flavor, because there's value to it. But that value is only needed every once in a while, and you are more than capable of acquiring it without going to school. So, from my perspective, that's one of those things that just keeps bringing itself up, and especially in the Raleigh area where we are, that's the culture, because you look, we have NC State, Duke, and UNC all within, you know, 45 minutes of my house. And when you clump them together, probably within, 20 minutes of each other, depending on traffic, of course. So we have this culture here in this region where you go to high school, you go to one of the big three, and then, you go do whatever. And that can't be the narrative that we continue to push out. So we need more and more people that are willing and supportive of that whole situation. That's really the change that has to happen, as we as leaders, and both of you that are on this call or on this stream right now are leaders, and be encouraging and empowering of folks that don't go the traditional route. Again, the my favorite team I've ever worked with didn't have that, and there was when you compare the price to acquire that, I just don't see the value in it. One of the things that's been really nice about the local school system is my daughter, who's 18, a senior now, very early in her high school career, they started really selling the concept of going to our local community college and getting your associates and all of the basics out of the way, because the cost was so much more reduced, and in some cases effectively free. So helping kids get over the stigma of like, oh, if I do that, then I'm not really achieving goals. Like, that's total BS. So that's what she's doing. Her first 2 years, she's already decided, she's applied, she's going to Wake Tech and knocking all that out. And then she's going to find the right school for her, for the majors that she wants. Right now, she thinks she knows what they are, but in 2 years, she might learn and adjust. So yeah, that's a thing that's important to me, that we find a way to keep knocking that barrier down. And a huge deal is the support system for when someone wants to do that, when someone wants to take that route, ensure that they're supported. Yeah. I guess that's my rant for the day. Um, but one thing for those of you that are leading or managing teams with members where you do have that, the self-taught versus the computer science major. Uh, the self-taught folks have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, which is good, but also can be self-destructive. So you have to coach and help them because that chip on their shoulder of, hey, I'm doing this without that, is one of the key things that drives them to really be great. And there's a ton of folks that are like that, but there's times where that goes too far, and that drive can create burnout. And that's a thing you have to be careful and thoughtful of, and help coach them through that. That oftentimes no one's asking them to prove themselves. The team believes they know they're a great piece of the team. The team often doesn't even know that they chose to go the self-taught route, because you know what? You don't care. You get this person that's on your team and they're good, and you're like freaking happy, like this is amazing. And their path to here isn't defining your perception of them. But so often, folks that have gone that path have this feeling that folks know that and see that. So you have to be very supportive of them as they work through that and get into this comfort zone of it doesn't freaking matter, because it really doesn't. It really doesn't, especially the further away you get from college. It really doesn't matter. Yeah, certs are one of those things. I don't I don't believe in them as a point of validation. What I've found is that, and again, so this is me, this is how I learn, this is how I grow. Being a practitioner carries a whole lot more weight with me than having a cert that says I learned a thing. It doesn't mean you can't be good at it. It's just what I prefer to see is like, hey, I've actually done this. Because I know a lot of people that have that know the things, but execution is hard. It's not easy to translate the things that you've learned and effectively support a team as they grow. It's easy, air quote, easy to get that cert, but then putting it in practice requires practice. Yeah, it's sad but true that there are many larger organizations that almost require the certs, and that can, and the way I view that is I view that as like lazy hiring. That like, oh, you have this checkbox, cool, yeah, you're in, come on in, as opposed to a real thoughtful inspection of that human, not just of the piece of paper that they have acquired with their name on it. So it's this delicate line that I found myself walking as I coach or do a podcast or do something like this, because I don't find value. No, I don't place a lot of value on them, but so many places do. So there's the ideal Josh world, which is quite often askew from many other folks. So there's that world that people are hearing, but I also want to make sure, just like you're doing now, is making sure that they are aware that there are many parts of the working world where that is a big thing. And those first, maybe second jobs, you might have to take a crappy job. Maybe it's not perfect, maybe it's not ideal, but it gets you in the door, and that's what matters. It gets you the capability to practice what you've learned and getting those certs, or in going to college, or in those classes, or whatever you, or doing the things on YouTube that you learned or GitHub or whatever it is, being able to put those into practice is the most important thing. Yeah, I want to highlight this. I'm working on some content around this because I get super excited about hiring and ways to do that. And one of the biggest issues that I see is hiring managers or hiring teams that go the checklist route. So that's lazy. What you really need to do is spend time with those recruiters, internal or external, and get them to really understand what you're looking for. And after they understand that, iterate through that with them as they bring you candidates. Get back to them on why this person's really exciting and you want to talk to them right now, and why this person you're a little concerned and might not be a good use of time for you to talk to them because you're worried about this piece. And then help them get better. And the more you do that, the more likely it is that candidates that land in your inbox or your hiring tool or whatever it might be are rock solid. But you have to invest in the recruiting team to enable them to get better. And there's so many places where it's just like, nope, this person's not good. And then hiring team wants to do better, but you don't give them the info. So like, how can I get better? I can't. Yeah, we'll hit on Disco Stew's point here. Um, Stu, I think the thing we did at the Dude with the code testing, well, I guess it wasn't testing, the code samples. So what we did at the Dude for technical inspection is we sent 2, maybe 3 questions for them to pseudocode around and be ready to discuss when they came on board. It wasn't one of those things where you we send them the questions, they type the answers up, it goes into a system, and it's a yes or a no. It was an approach of, let's see how this person thinks through things. So we would have the opportunity to view the code that they wrote and be ready with questions when they come in to understand why they made these choices. Um, and I thought that worked really well. Stu, I don't know if you have a different view, because I know you were much deeper in that level than I was, but I was pretty happy with our capability. Now there's so many places where people use that as like it's a yes or no quiz of like, yes, you get it perfectly right, or no, you don't. And we know there are no single perfect answers on things like this, but it also gave our team an opportunity to coach and work through an issue with somebody and see if they engaged or got defensive or things like that. So the unfortunate reality is there is no short circuit way to vet people without certs. And I don't think certifications really are a viable vetting tool, in my view. So cultural fit, cultural fit in the hiring process is one of those things that's tricky, because in most places, I don't think people really know what their culture is. And if you go somewhere and you ask the token question of, tell me about your culture, and they say, work hard, play hard, run. As soon as that happens, I'm done. I'm done. No matter what side of the table I'm on. If I'm hiring somebody or if I'm being hired, definitely if I'm being hired, I'm done. Because so many people aren't intentional about their their culture, and it just kind of happens. And then there's lamentation about some of the issues that have come up. So to me, it's very important to see how intentional people are about culture, because many places it's just one of those like token questions that people ask and no one gives a real answer. The way we did it at the Dude was based on our core values, and we shaped questions around the three core values that we had. And each group was assigned one of the core values, and they had the opportunity to use those question sets to help discover if that person aligned with that core value. And then if they did across all three, then we knew there was a cultural fit. But that took us a solid year to define and refine. So that's an interesting one, Disco Stew. Uh, I I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and when I boil culture down to something simple, it gets down to two things. It's what you permit and what you promote. That's your culture. People understand and respond to the promotion that's being done. Um, and then there come those difficult moments when something happens and you decide if you permit it, it's now a part of the culture. If you don't permit it, then you've made a very clear statement of this is not a part of our culture. This is not something that we're going to support. This is not who we are. So I try and coach people and teams to think of it like that, of you start to set this is what's okay and this is what isn't. So Stu, like if you go back to all of the great work that the chapters did around approaches to coding, you were able to help set that engineering culture of this is how we build the code. These are the things that we're down with, and these are the things that we aren't. And it became very clear and easy for people to step into that culture and just keep rolling. But then as you step back, it was culturally about who are we and what do we get excited about and what do we celebrate when teams or people do things, therefore encouraging it to happen more often. And then what do we do when something goes sideways? Are we going to say, "Yep, that's part of who we are," or are we going to say, like, "No, we're not gonna support that." So that's my what I perceive to be a unambiguous definition of what culture is. And it works for my brain. I don't know if it works for other folks, but that's a model that I've put in place for me that helps me, especially in those moments of crisis when something happens. And having that has encouraged me to double, triple check my response before I say or do anything, because I am explicitly showing the team as a leader whether this is a new piece of our culture that we're adding in because it's awesome, or whether this is a piece of culture that we're going to reject. We've definitely I've had that issue of the different cultures by department, and the so we'll highlight that one. A couple things happen when that happens, especially with things that I've just talked about. Your your team begins to perceive that across the organization and gets frustrated of like, well, why can they do that and we can't? So the approach that I take is, hey, let's make sure that our house is clean before we start thinking about anybody else's. So we do that. We focus on us, And then I, as a leader, it's my responsibility to try and shape the culture across the organization. There's some people that don't want to tackle that, but that's something that I'm super passionate about. So I am going to take on the sometimes ridiculous goal of trying to change the culture of the entire company from the inside out. That's hard. That takes time. It's frustrating. And while I'm willing to take that on, sometimes that creates more frustration within your team because they don't know or see some of the work you're putting in to try and drive those changes across the board. It's just very black and white of they're rolling with our cultural approach or they aren't. And that's created issues in the past where, driving that cultural change across an organization, depending on how big, will take years. And there will be these frustration points along the way that your teams don't have visibility into. And again, it is truly a binary issue. It's black or white. They are or they aren't. And until they are, there'll be frustrations within your team because there is a perceived difference of expectations, a perceived difference of standards, a perceived difference of just expectations. And that, think about if you have a sibling, like there's always somebody that feels like they're getting slighted on something, even though the parent might be trying not to, or maybe they are. I don't know. But there's always that perception of people want it to be completely fair and equal, which is what it should be. But driving change, actually, I guess that's from the outside in, uh, is a challenge. And then you put yourself out there as a leader saying, hey, I'm working on this. And it takes like a year plus. And they're like, dude, WTF? Are you really doing anything about this? Or are you just telling us it's going to be okay? Just trying to get us to be quiet. So that's a delicate line you've got to walk as a leader. So as usual, Disco Stew saved the day because I was getting ready to bail. Thank you, sir. I owe you yet again. Yeah, I feel good. Any other last things, gentlemen? Yeah, you've saved my butt a few times. Yeah. So, yeah. Mr. Kellogg, Mr. Eves, thanks for jumping in. Thanks for helping drive the conversation. And there's good content. These I'll learn how to talk. And so these will probably end up on TikTok or something silly like that. So that's what I'll be doing. I know Discord. I know I would like to do that. Right now, the tool that I'm using doesn't offer that yet. So everybody have a good holiday. Take care of yourselves. Drive safely wherever you're going, and don't overeat, or do overeat and then take a nap. All right, folks. Take care.